Rob Grimoire. And he just the best. If you need a sensitivity editor, a sensitivity consultant, call Rob.
Amazing.
So great.
Amazing.
And most of that feedback and experience was about addition, which was cool because I think, fear of getting it wrong kind of kept some of the content out of the story, And so Rob was like, look, even if it's hard and even if it's uncomfortable, like it's better to face it and it's better to include it than to leave it out, So we talked to him about what the Black characters might be feeling, not assuming their stance on something, but like sort of letting them be a full, real character with their own needs. There's a character in the book who is a relative of the white owners of this place. This plantation turned tourist trap is really what it is. It's a tourist trap and a wedding venue. And one of the cousins, because there are so many, dozens and dozens of cousins, one of them is Black. His name is Lewis. And he works on the reality show because he's super freaking smart. So he does a ton of like the research. He does a ton of the technical stuff for this show.
If you've seen he's Eric, okay? So if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, he does this reality show and he's in this really difficult spot. And Rob's like, yeah, because it's an awesome job and because he needs a job and because he's, taking care of his family and, it's this question. So Cypress Bend is this place and it's like, the main character feels, or one of the main characters, because we get a few, feels like his responsibility is to employ every cousin, which means every cousin, Black or white, can come and get a job on that, at the wedding venue, at the cafe, doing tours, or on the reality show itself, And so Rob, I think, helped us be less afraid of what to include. He's like, don't shy away from it, face it, put it in there and put it in, like show the complication of it. And that's like wrestle with it. Eliza was saying, like wrestle with it, even though it's hard, and it's so good. And I don't want to reveal one of the,
no, you can't.
I won't. There's an aspect that was added after Rob's consultation, and it made the novel like it was already good, but it made it so good to add that element.
Now I have a question. This is a question for actually the both of you, as authors and writers. When you write a book, do you think in your mind, okay, I want to include every gender, I want to include every race, I want to add aspects that is inclusive, or do you sometimes write books specifically for certain individuals?
I mean, I read about the South. They're Black people and they're, Hispanic people. And I mean, if I were to, like the novel I'm working on right now, or that I just finished the first draft of, if I didn't have Black people in that would be really weird. That would be really strange if there were no Black people walking around this town.
If there were no Black cousins.
Yeah, and if they didn't have, that would be really strange. Because that's the thing, that happens in South Carolina. You have Black family. I mean, look at Strom Thurmond, right? You have Black family. You might not want to talk about it. You might not want to face it, but you got them.
But why do so many authors do that, though? I've noticed that, especially with Southern Gothic horror novels. It's kind of whitewashed. You know what I mean? It's all white characters.
Because they're afraid. That is exactly why. Fear of getting it wrong keeps you from wrestling with it. And so it keeps the content out of the book, and that's not better. And like, that is something that Rob taught us.
Yeah. And also, you know, if you want to write a nice little story about, you know, what the white people do on the plantation, and then all of a sudden you bring a black guy in there, it really fucking complicates what the white people are doing. Because if they don't notice there's a black man in there, and how that black person's, you know, existence as a person complicates their self-interest, and, you know, they don't want to face that. They don't think about it.
Yeah.
So
it takes effort. Like, it takes proactivity. You know what I mean? And not everybody does that, because it's hard. Like, it's hard. Like Elizabeth was saying, it's hard to face that, and it's scary to face that because we know we are flawed. I am from Western New York, and what I will say is most of the racism up here is more camouflaged, because people up north, like, we don't always know we're racist. Like, they think they're not. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's not better. Like, you'll ask people up here, like, oh, are you racist? They'll say no. And then it's like, if you interrogate them further, you're like, no, that's racism, right? But like, they don't think it is. So,
yeah, like my parents would have told you they're not racist. Like,
I'm about to say, people up north, I live in Baltimore now, and people up north, they like to use the comment, oh, why does it got to be about race? It's not about race. They act like race is not a thing.
exactly. Yep.
But they only use that.
Away from it.
But they only use that when it's something that's benefiting a minority. Like, if you say, oh my goodness, there's two, like, I saw it 2 years ago when there was like two black quarterbacks were playing the Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the Eagles. And I was just reading the comment, oh, why do it gotta be about race? Why do it gotta be about black? And it was coming from specifically white men up north. And it was like, okay, it's everything in this country is literally about race until it's something that's benefiting or talking positively about a minority group. Why does it all have to be about race?
Yep.
and I mean, the thing with being in the South is that, at least because we've had to grapple with this for so long,
Yeah.
most Southerners are aware they're probably racist.
Yes.
They don't.
They're proud of it.
But yeah,
They're proud of it. They're proud of it.
but they're racist, and yes, they might be proud of it, but they know they are.
Yeah.
Rob, and Rob, like, Rob just talked us through that in such it was pedagogical. Do you know what I mean? Like, he sat down with us. We had a meeting just like this, and he like taught us for an hour, or, you know, maybe more. And it was just such a wonderful experience. And it's something that, you know, we're going to carry forward into all of the books we're doing together, you know?
You know what he said to me that I still think about? And I think about this at least like every few days, legitimately. He told us that the town he lives in, every single road leading out of that town leads to a fucking plantation. Because they didn't want the slaves that were working on the plantation, that were working in the town, to have anywhere to run away to. So every road goes to a plantation, and like to this day, when you leave that town, you any road you drive on out of that town, you pass a fucking plantation.
Yeah, that was horrific. That was and that's partially what 98 Sabers is about, is like, this history isn't gone, although a lot of people want to sweep it under the carpet. It's a veneer, right? Like, if you take a plantation where generations of white people enslaved other humans, right, and you dress it up as a wedding venue, it's still a fucking plantation. And there's dialogue in the novel about, you know, sometimes they call it a farm, and one of the characters like, call it what it is. Like, stop trying to dress this up. Stop trying to hide this ugly legacy.
Yeah.
So it's just really, it's a really wonderful exploration. And also another thing that Rob counseled us on was like, you can't solve it in this novel because you can't solve it in real life. Like, there is no way to reconcile. There is no way to make up for it. There's no way to ignore or erase or even apologize for that history that will make one bit of difference, right? Like, it is as ugly as it is, and there's kind of no changing that. So it's like, then our choices are, it's not going away. So do we face it or do we run from it? And the novel faces it. And eventually the characters in the novel face it too.
I was really grateful for that when Rob talked to us about that, because my instinct as an author was not to fix it. Like, I didn't have an easy solution to this novel. This novel has no easy solution. And I was really worried about that. I was like, how are they going to feel about how this ends? You know what I mean? Because I don't like wrap it up in a neat little bow. And so that was really good to hear that somebody else was like, no, you can't fix this. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You.
Like, the interpersonal relationships of the characters can have arcs, and some of those can have resolutions, right? But this larger backdrop of modern racism in the South and the legacy of those horrors, like, that's not solvable. So don't try. And so that was really helpful. Now, I will say, and this is me picking on her because I want it, Rob and I both want a sequel.
I tried to write it. And
the sequel, okay, what I read of the sequel draft was so good. So I'm still going to push for it. I'm just giving you a break from my nagging.
She's giving me a break.
That's it.
Well, I got one last question. Rebecca, so you actually did the editing on this. So the first time you read this story, tell me about the emotions that you were going through.
This book is so good. By the way, I'm a little bit stoic sometimes, so I just want to tell people that. Like, often when I think things are funny, I do not laugh. I think things are sad, I do not cry. So this book affected me to the point that my emotions were visible and physical, the way a lot of books are not for me. So I laughed out loud. I cried at several places. And then when I read it again and then again, because we go through draft cycles, we do developmental edits, and then we do line edits, and then we do a proofread. And I cried again. Like, I knew what was coming. I had already read it, and I'm very aware that it is fiction because I've edited it, 2-3 times at this point, and it still affected me so much that I cried. And it's not only at the horrors of the South, which it is, but it's also, there are some parts that are just freaking scary. Like there is real horror in this, and then there's like paranormal horror, and we get these really complicated sibling relationships and family dynamics, and it's like these characters will break your heart 50 times in this book in different ways.
I fucking love these characters. I love these characters. And that is the thing that keeps me saying, like, not hating you for wanting me to write a sequel, because I do not want to leave these characters alone. I do not want to leave them behind. Sullivan is an absolute hot mess. I love him to pieces. He's the brother that has been estranged from his family for 10 years. And he is forced to come home to deal with these people. Again, he does not want to come home. And he thinks he is above this, and he is the good liberal who hates all this stuff, and he is so complicit in all this nonsense and refuses to see it. Mm-hmm. And his older brother is the one who is going to save everybody, and he is going to employ every last ragged scrap of blood relative, and he is going to run this plantation and keep everything together. And, damn, they're going to all scapegoat him for it, but he doesn't have a fucking choice in the matter because somebody has to keep this shit together, damn it. And he is going to fight with his brother and argue with his brother, and then you've got 2 cousins who show up who were raised with him, and then you've got this abusive father who has died, who used to dress the boys up in Civil War uniforms, and who rants about, I think one point, does he rant about Jefferson Davis at one point? He goes on a rant about Jeff Davis. You got a flock of parrots living on their back garden that sing Dixie at random intervals. I mean, they live in the lemon trees in the back. I don't know where the hell that came from. I wish I knew where that came from. I love the parrots to pieces.
But I want to point out all the Gothic elements in this because I'm obsessed with the Gothic. So Elizabeth does Southern Gothic so good, right? But like I love the interpretation of it because you have some things that if you think about it are recognizable for the genre, for the Gothic genre. And one of them is Mad Woman in the Attic. Okay, so think of Bertha from Jane Eyre, Rochester's first wife, who he locks up upstairs. Okay, we don't have a mad woman, but we have a senile great aunt who lives upstairs
in the attic,
and she's fantastic. She is one of my favorite characters. She's so sassy; she doesn't give a shit. She's so great, but it's like we have these sort of like parallels to these characters and to these things, and another huge sort of trope of the Gothic genre is the superstitious villagers, right? The locals who know more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And their kind of counterpart in this novel, the animals at Cypress Bend. The animals at Cypress Bend always know more than the people. And they act as like this early warning system for paranormal activity and for stressors and for just sort of like bad things on the horizon, And so the German shepherds and the parrots and all these other things are kind of like giving these alarm bells in the same way that in an old Gothic, the villagers would be saying cryptic warning shit.
And this goes back to, on Skip Ranch, they always call the cattle's biosensors. And, the cattle are always going to act up when you've got something paranormal going on. And the same thing happens at Cypress Bend. So anytime something paranormal is going to happen, the dogs freak out. Okay. Fun fact, I named those dogs after my own dogs. So they all have the names of dogs I have either had. There's one that has a aspirational dog name. And you've got, parrots, who are freaking out when stuff happens.
Those big lizards.
Oh, the tegus!
Those are so creepy. Goodness. Invasive species, which again is like so symbolic, white people are an invasive species. Yes. They always have been in every place we've gone, right? Mm-hmm. So like we have these invasive species.
They're pack hunting lizards that are practically warm-blooded. They're huge.
And terrifying. And they're chasing dogs.
Yeah,
the German shepherds in one scene, and it's freaking scary. And my heart was worried until I knew how that went.
I saw one of them under our back deck once. Those things are huge.
Oh, they like give me the creeps.
Terrible.
Oh, the weather is weird at Cypress Bend. Like again, like this Gothic convention, right? That like bad weather sort of rolls in as part of some of these paranormal events. It's just such a good novel. I can't recommend it enough. I can't tell people accurately how good it is because it is that good.
It was fun. My husband and I were at the Fredericksburg Book Festival weekend, and a woman walked by with a palmetto tattoo. She had the crescent moon. My friend calls it the palmetto crescent moon tattoo on her ankle. And he was like, hey, calls her over to our table. She's from Columbia, of course. And he started telling her about 98 Sabers. And he was like, it will give you flashbacks. If you're from Columbia, it will give you flashbacks. Because the book is so rooted in place. It is so rooted in South Carolina. I mean, like I said, I mentioned the fact in that book that the tap water tastes like moss. Because the tap water in Columbia, South Carolina, tastes like fucking moss, and it has since 2015 when we had that giant ass flood. One of the things I get into there is, Dylan Roof was from Columbia, who shot at the church in Charleston. And I have to confront that. And he bought his guns at a store that was 2 miles from my old house. That's where he purchased guns that were used in that shooting. My best friend actually oversaw his case when he was arrested for being creepy at the mall in Columbia Columbiana Mall in Columbia, South Carolina. And they eventually let him go for that because they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute him. He was the public defender on that case. And yeah. And so he wasn't like the only one, but he was one of the ones working on it. And I mean, this is stuff that you have to look at. You have to like live with, you know, and this stuff is all mentioned in the novel. I mentioned the Orangeburg Massacre, which no one knows about. I mean, they talk about Kent State all the time. They talk about the National Guard shooting white kids in Ohio. You never heard that the actual first time the National Guard opened fire on college students was in 1968 in Orangeburg, South Carolina, when they killed 3 of them and injured 21. Nobody talks about that, you know, and it's so upsetting. You know, this is a thing that happened and it's like forgotten. And this is part of the history of this place, and it's, you know, it's stuff you need to look at, and it's just so rooted in this place. And so, yeah,
the book is going to piss people off
in
a good way, I think. People who need to maybe open their eyes a little bit, this is going to piss them off, because if folks are from that area and they read this, right, it's bringing out all the dirt that they've been sweeping under the rug their whole lives. And so it is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to make people mad. But what is that expression? Like, good art hurts. Like, good art is supposed to hurt. Mm-hmm. Like, it's supposed to make us think. It's supposed to make us wrestle with things that we have either ignored or taken for granted, or like buried deep within our subconscious. You know, and like this brings everything to the surface. It's like dragging a very deep lake.
Thank you for saving me, because that is the Orangeburg Massacre is something that makes me like so stupid angry that like I needed rescued from that, because I will just like foam at the mouth and like go on.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that this novel is also going to be helpful. So it's not just going to bother the people who would rather ignore this stuff. It's also going to teach people about things, you know, who might, because of the novel, go and actually look things up. Like maybe it will. I tell you what, no one who reads this novel is going to be able to attend a wedding at a plantation without tremendous soldiers.
I've been to one in South Carolina, and I felt uncomfortable, and it was definitely fun. But the weird part about it, it was 2 Black individuals getting married at a plantation, and I felt even weird about it. I was like, okay, this is.
But you're bringing up what like Rob said, which is like, you can't make people's decisions for them, like even as characters, and you can't make assumptions. Like you can't assume that no Black wedding guest would attend. Like you can't assume that, even if you think, well, probably it's going to not be super common. So yeah, I think that Rob just really, he helped us be brave about things, and he helped us to be less ignorant about other things. So like, hire a sensitivity consultant for sure.
But because of the whole learning thing, which I think was really important to me and really important to Rebecca as well, she really focused on this. We included a bibliography. So every source that I consulted through writing this novel, and there were obviously like a lot, is included in that. And also we have discussion questions at the end for book groups.
Yep.
Because the book, like if you read through it, like she said, like, I hope you never go to a plantation wedding again. But beyond that, like, there are questions we hope people think about. So,
and if you do, I hope you can't sit comfortably through it.
Yes.
Like even if you're a white person, I hope you read this book and you cannot ever again visit Stone Mountain. I hope that you can never again go to any kind of event function at a former plantation and sit there comfortably and ignore it. Like have the knowledge, have the feeling, have the discomfort. Like the discomfort is warranted. And if you are not uncomfortable, right? Like you're putting those horse blinders on. And that's not how things change. That's not how things get better.
And I mean, they tell us like, you know, this is something you're not allowed to look at. as a kid, especially in the South. This is something you're not allowed to look at. This is something you're not allowed to talk about. I mean, the fact that I am on this show openly speaking about race, like I just talked about the Orangeburg Massacre and got super fucking mad, right? Like, I feel just like show out here like, oh my God, my parents would just die of shame. I don't speak to them anymore for many reasons, but they would like die of shame. I mean, like, this is so forbidden to talk about this stuff, to deal with this stuff. This is like the thing you never fucking talk about. You don't talk about this. You don't confront this. And so, but it'll never get better if we don't, you know?
Yeah. And that's the problem with this country is, and it's on different sides, a bunch of different sides where, oh, that's too scary. That's too tough to talk about. Let's pretend like it never happened. Let's be quiet about it. And nothing ever changes that way. And that's why you see in this country a lot of history is repeating itself.
Yep.
And it's because people decide not to look at the past and history and learn from it. Instead, they want to pretend like it never existed. And
it's like people who didn't think enough about Hitler elected Donald Trump. Like, that's what fucking happened there.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, we should, like, if you don't see that parallel right away, again, like, you are being willfully ignorant. You know you could look and you know you should look and you're refusing, and that is so wrong.
My kid calls me Bellini.
Now listen, everyone. We learned a lot in this interview, okay? We learned that all three of us have cats and they all made appearances at some point during this interview.
But only Rebecca's
And we also learned not to eat at, what's it called, Marquise's? What was it?
Maurice's.
More racist, yes. Do not eat at more racist if you're in Columbus, South Carolina, period. They're owned by the KKK. I didn't know that at the time. And we also learned, too, to go ahead and pre-order your copy of this amazing book written by Elizabeth. And down in the description, I have the link to pre-order. It's up for pre-order right now, so definitely grab your copy. Also, too, Elizabeth, Rebecca, where can everyone find you on social media?
Oh, you go first.
RebeccaCuthbert.com, and I have a link tree, and I'm on Twitter, and I am on Instagram.
And before we go, I waited the whole time to see if she would notice. She never did.
I did notice. You thought I didn't notice? It was blurred out. I know what my book cover looks like.
This is for sponsors, and it's fantastic. So I'm going to plug this book because she freaking won't. It's Amazing Feminist Horror. It just came out. I always say women's rights. And
do you know what?
So
do you know, Rebecca? I saw that same book. Chris did promote it. It was at the that book festival I went to in New Jersey. He had it on his table with your other book, the one that we talked about writing for authors.
Creep This Way. Yeah.
Yes, he had Creep This Way and your new book on the table, and he was promoting them.
That's awesome, and I'm gonna return that gesture. Undertaker Books also published Inkvine. So this is a novella by Elizabeth. It is fantastic. And it examines gender roles and poverty in the South. And it takes a hard look at that. Emmy is the protagonist. Her voice is like some sort of druggy lullaby. Like, it is so good. And so pick up while you're pre-ordering 98 Sabers, go ahead and order a copy of Inkvine too.
And Harlem, Travis Bruce actually has a copy of Inkvines on his bookshelf, and it is a great book.
Oh,
so I'll definitely grab your copy. Listen, Elizabeth, Rebecca, anytime you want to come on the show, just hit me up. It's cool.
Thank you. I do want to say I'm gonna do a plug. Hospital of Haunts just came out from Water Tower Hill Publishing. I have a story in there called Past Lies Latent. And it is this fantastic anthology about a big old hospital called Litchhurst Hospital. So one, Hospital of Haunts, pick that one up. The other one is that I have a children's book coming out next month. It is called Down in the Dark Deep, Where the Puddlers Dwell, and that's coming out from Malediction AEA Press. So be on the lookout for that. And then in January, also from Water Tower Hill Publishing, a literary speculative fiction collection called 6 O'Clock House and Other Strange Tales.
I love that title.
That's January. Thank you.
Well, listen, everybody, get in the description. I might have links to all their stuff down there, so definitely support them. Support Women of Horror, by the way. Listen,
yes.
Let's support Women of Horror.
Thank you, Travis. No problem, Travis, because Travis is so welcoming, and he's always having us on here whenever we ask, and he always makes sure to invite tons of women guests, and that needs to be celebrated.
Travis is so great about supporting Women of Horror. So thank you, because I always see you posting in the Ladies of Horror Facebook group. Every time you do a new interview with another woman, you always post it in there, and like, don't think women don't notice that. Because we fucking noticed, Travis, and we really appreciate it. So thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, the admin of that group is amazing. But she sent me a message the other day. She said, "Travis, slow down. Shit, you give me too many fucking videos at one time." I'm like, I'm sorry. I posted an ad. I posted an ad in that group like a month ago, and I was like, anyone come on? And like, I got like tons of women. So it just happened that for like 2.5 weeks, it was nothing but women of horror interviews. And I was just posting them every single day. So I believe her name is Linda. I want to say a shout out. Yes, I want to say a shout out to you over at Ladies of Horror on Facebook group. You rock. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. That's Elizabeth and Rebecca. We'll see you next time. Take care.